私たちが出会ったのは運命かもしれませんね。そうだね。
No, let's not start off the review with that. We opened this week with Masho on a video call with her father, and all of a sudden I'm watching South Park. Yep, don't even have to ask who's animating this week. Happy, nice birthday, Mitsuyama. Hopefully they also let you retire this year. Seriously, if this is going to be his final year, you can really tell he's just running on fumes at this point with how little of a crap he gives about stuff like anatomical proportions and smooth movements. Granted, good animation wouldn't help Daddy Smothers here, who rightfully made his daughter cringe a little. But yeah, this little parental interaction would become a little more important later, so at least it wasn't a pointless, badly animated scene. Anyway, Masho was then able to rather impressively pick up that Ale was getting a little homesick just based off of her subtle movements that seemed to indicate that she was looking for her parents. Thus, they tried to figure out a way to contact people who lived in a different dimension. And fortunately, Granny had their full tablet toy of the season, the Mirror Pad. Though with its current power supply, it could only view different parts of the city. Granny, should we be worried about anyone's privacy by any chance? But yeah, as for why she had a magical wiretapping mirror...
実はね、私はスカイランド人なの。
Oh, okay. What? And honestly, I kind of like this development, as along with getting a funny reaction from our resident straight man named Masho, who turned into a Yaneda, it does make sense to just come out and admit that she was from Skyland. There's really nothing to be gained from not telling Sora anything, and aside from this one dramatic reaction, her granddaughter could handle this reveal since she's pretty deep into this stuff at this point. That said, for the sake of theatrics, I do kind of wish this reveal was a little more dramatic. I mean, at least do it in a more interesting location rather than just in your living room. Anyway, Yo-Yo explained her backstory in that she was a scholar who had traveled to Earth as a part of her research.
いきなりこんな話をしても信じられないでしょ?
Lady, compared to everything else in this show, you being a reverse isekai is kind of tame. Anyway, another advantage of getting this revelation done early was that it also gave them a reason to do some actual world building, like explaining how those crystals we saw in the first episode were essentially the power sources of Skyland, and what they would need to give the Mirror Pad enough juice to make contact with it. So they just needed to get these sky jewels, which for whatever reason were in the mountains behind the house. Again, more stuff that they really should try to explain later, like did something happen that caused a bunch of these things to fall to Earth of all places? Anyway, they headed out after learning that Sora's pen could be used as a divining rod. And as they left, Granny was still hiding at least a few more secrets, like how she seemed to know future events, and there was also that orange bird, who I'm sure won't become important later. Along the way, we got some nice moments between the two girls and the baby, with Masho coming off as a good mom, who, as the earlier scene hinted at, was sensitive to Ale's needs. Nice stuff that was followed up by a decent PSA. Why are we using the Mario reference for the thumbnail? Oh, I know. Along the way, they took a little break to eat their obvious product placement bread of the season that I personally don't think looks all that tasty. I don't know, fluffy white bread just doesn't look all that good to me, even if they are going for a cloud motif, probably because it kind of looks like uncooked dough. That said, unlike previous product placements, this did at least serve a significant plot purpose, as Masho had made them specifically for the Skylanders, believing that it would help relieve some of their homesickness. Again, just some good character building for the deuteragonist. Eventually, they started to get close to the jewel, as well as some strange rock formations. We'd learn who made them in just a bit, but first Sora thought the jewel might be in one of the boulders, so... Somewhere Tanjiro's laying on a massive sign of frustration, and he doesn't know why. Yeah, I guess this was meant to establish that Skylanders have a greater degree of strength than the average Earthling, which would explain Sora's sick parkour in the first episode, but again, I kind of wish we had gotten a bit more of a significant reveal, or perhaps not established this at all, as it kind of lessens Sora's transformation into a Precure if she's already superhuman. I don't know, this just kind of felt like a bit of a superfluous scene in general. Jeez, who the hell wrote this? Hello, my old enemy. Yeah, I'll talk more about this during the closing thoughts, but eventually our protagonist found a sky jewel, as well as the guy who constructed the rock structures, Katsudon. Thus, we got our Monster of the Week fight against some bamboo, and I like this little touch here of Sora still trembling a little before transforming, signifying that she's still kind of getting used to this whole hero thing. Anyway, we got an Aoyama fight, so... Nice backflip there. I mean, I didn't know you could maintain momentum by just barely touching the ground. I mean, still gotta give points to the show for having more physical fights than previous seasons, and the bamboo monster using its shoots to shoot off missiles is pretty clever. Just a pity that probably the longest fight of the season so far had to be animated by Mr. Nice here. Anyway, Sora defeated it, but the pig tried to use his truffle sniffing skills to find some shrooms to recharge himself with. You know, I'm starting to notice a little pattern with this season. With the villain having self-destructed on himself, our heroines returned to the house and charged up the mirror pad. And I guess Yo-Yo or the palace had been trying to connect directly with the other, so they instantly did it when it was charged, I don't know, whatever. As it did lead to a nice and kind of sad moment of Elle trying to reach out to her parents beyond the tablet. Even after the drama, their hands were just subtly off-center, which would make sense when talking through a video screen, and it really hit home that they're literally worlds apart. And as I said, this did tie back to Mashiro's earlier scene with her father, which made her appreciate him a little more. Granted, I would have preferred not to see that bad animation again, but whatever, I'm gonna block out this episode's visuals by tomorrow. Anyway, just as quickly as they had made connection with Skyland, the mirror pad disconnected due to a lack of power. And the episode ended with Sora drawing better than anything in this episode, and Mashiro asking if she was also homesick.
隣に友達がいますから。
Oh, for God's sake, get a room!
And as hinted at last week, they were going to do some previous season cameos a la Happiness Charge, with this week's being, Yui. Okay, but y'all do know the term is absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? I mean, I don't think it would happen with me and this character, but still. Well, I guess it was a little too much to ask for a clean sweep of great first episodes from this show. I mean, this wasn't bad per se, except for that animation, and we finally did get a little more world building. That said, some of the writing was also a little stiff, which I guess kind of matched up well with this animation. While I have become rather jaded to Mitsuru Aoyama's work these days, it is still off-putting to just know Toei is still bringing him in, especially at his age. That said, this episode was at least kind of visually salvaged thanks to some solid storyboarding from the veteran director of Yes Precure 5, Toshiaki Komura. I'm sure it was thanks to him that we got some of the better visual storytelling of this episode, like Mashiro picking up on Aile's homesickness and Sora's trembling hands. And some of the fight did look good, likely thanks to some non-Aoyama key animations. The actual story did progress several overarching plots, including getting Yo-Yo being a Skylandian out of the way, and establishing the Sky Jewels. Stuff like that was appreciated, though it was also kind of delivered flatly. Likely partially due to the animation, but also Konomi Shugo, who was always kind of the most mid-writers for Tropical Rouge in my opinion. I mean, she's not bad, but her writing just kind of lacks that impact, that sort of oomph factor, which for something as fantastical as Precure is kind of required. Granted, it was more of an issue with over-the-top season like Tropical Rouge, whilst this show is ironically a little more down-to-earth, so maybe she'll prosper more here. Regardless, the developments themselves were good, and overall, this was just a meh episode. Something more to be remembered for what it established, and less about its visuals. Work on the Delicious Party overview is almost done. Honestly, it's coming out a little longer than we originally expected. I don't know, maybe just explaining why certain things in this show didn't work for me require a little more explanation than normal. Regardless, we will try to get it out by this Friday or early next week. Either way, do look forward to it. And until then though, farewell for now, my friends, and uh-oh, I think those shrooms are starting to kick
mister,
in.
This here is the stairway to heaven. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, screw you, you stupid frog. I'm gonna go down the other way. Take that.